Hello everyone, my name is Jon Sorensen. I'm part of the team at Prairie View A&M University that developed the new Protective Factors Survey for the DFPS. I would like to today just go over the user manual with you, and hopefully that'll clear up any questions that you might have. The overview of today's presentation, we're going to go over the purpose and objectives. We're going to give a description of the PFSC, that's the child version, and the PFSY, which is the youth version. We'll talk about preparation for the survey, administering the survey, and then show you some sample items. The purpose of the PFS is we developed it to assist with the evaluation of juvenile delinquency prevention programs for children ages 6 to 9 and youth ages 10 to 17. As you may be aware, the older version of the PFS was geared mainly toward youth, and it was quite lengthy, and it was taking too long to fill out, and that's why they asked us to move and create two new versions, a shorter version for children and also a shorter version for youth. The objectives the objectives used to measure delinquency prevention programs. These items that we used attempted to capture improved youth, family bond and communication, improved student engagement and learning and school involvement, increased self-esteem, self-efficacy, and increased association with positive peers, and increase community leadership skills and competence. In developing the instrument, we performed focus groups and pilot testing at 4 locations: Dallas, Austin, Houston, and El Paso. We had a total of 265 participants. 95 were children ages 6 to 9, 170 were youth ages 10 to 17. The focus groups mainly were completed on the children, because that survey had not been created and we wanted to make it age appropriate, and so that took the most time. For the youth ages 10 to 17, we started with the original PFS as the base, and then we pilot tested new questions. And of course we asked the children how their understanding of those questions was, and we also spoke with the adults and providers and other PEI personnel. The Protective Factors Survey and instrument description. We created 2 separate versions, as I already mentioned. One for children that was age appropriate for those 6 to 9, the PFSC as we call it, and then one for youth ages 10 to 17. The responses reflect youth perceptions about family, school, self, peers, and their community. There are 2 different types of questions. One is positively stated. These measure protective factors. We also have negatively stated items that are indicated by a small r in the appendix to the user manual, and these are used to indicate risk factors. So the little r means that they're reverse scored. The composite scores for these surveys measure the degree of adjustment and attitude before and after entering DFPS programs. A higher score is a higher likelihood of positive outcomes. A lower score indicates increased level of risk for negative behavioral outcomes. Okay, we'll first go to the PFSC. It's an 18-item instrument for children ages 6 to 9. The items cover 5 areas. We already mentioned family, school, individual, peers, and community. And you'll see the item numbers corresponding to those areas listed on this slide. With it being only 18 items, it's fairly quick to fill out. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes maximum, and the questions are worded such that all of the 6 to 9-year-olds were able to answer them fairly easily. The next survey, the PFSY, the survey for youth, is a 25-item instrument. It's divided into the same 5 areas, and with this one we were actually able to, using factor analysis, to come up with subscales, and those subscales had favorable psychometric properties, as did both of the scales overall. Preparing the survey. Step 1, make the needed number of copies of the instrument. When you do this, please take into consideration that you have essentially 4 versions. You have the PFSC for the children ages 6 to 9, you have the PFSY for children ages 10 to 17. There are also a Spanish version, language version of each of those. So that should be taken into consideration when you copy the surveys for the clients. Step 2, secure an area that's free of distractions, such as an empty classroom, It's very important that you keep the foot traffic to a minimum, those people that are entering or exiting. Also, it would be good to try and separate those that are filling out the survey from those that are not participating, because as you well know, when the children are together, they sometimes get a lot of crosstalk going, and it slows up the process. And also they start the sharing of answers and that sort of business. Step 3, write the participant ID numbers on each survey. If you have them, it's best to fill it out ahead of time and make sure that it matches up with them, the individual participant. If you don't have the ID number at that time, simply make sure that their name is filled in, date of birth and such, and that way the coordinators can enter that information in later. Step 4, write the name of the agency providing the services on each survey. Now we'll go to actually administering the survey. The completion time, as I already mentioned, is about 10 to 15 minutes. Step 1, seat the participants in positions that minimize their ability to share the information during the survey. We realize the ideal, of course, is that they're at desks, and the desks are, interleaved, every other child in an empty desk. But I realize that sometimes they might be sitting on a gymnasium floor or something like that. But still, to the best of your ability, it's good to keep them separate so that they're not cross-talking and sharing questions or answers, and also so that the people who are not participating are not involved with the other children that are actually participating. An absolute no is that we don't want parents present when the survey is being filled out. A lot of these questions are very personal. They're asking about family life and school and peers and that sort of thing. So it's definitely not the best idea to have the parents in the room. Step 2, hand out the survey. Give each participant his or her survey in a number 2 pencil or pen. You should then introduce the survey, and you can read the little caption that's on the front of the survey. I'm going to ask you to complete the survey today. This survey will help us better understand how children and youth think, feel, and act when it comes to their family, friends, schools, community, and themselves. We will use the information to help us improve the program. There are no right or wrong answers. There will be no talking. Please fill in all the answers and answer them to the best of your ability. There's also a question, an area at the top of the survey, which you'll see in a minute when we show you the template, where the children write in their names, their birthday, and the date. You can provide them with the date, and if they don't know their birthday, then just ask them to fill in their age. Step 4, provide alternate arrangements for non-participants. I already mentioned this. If it's all possible to keep them separate, or at least involve them in some activity where they won't be bothering the children that are filling out the survey. Step 5, make accommodations for participants who may have difficulty completing the survey on their own, either due to language barriers, disabilities, or age. If you have students with learning disabilities or very young children, or children who maybe need it read to them in another language, it's certainly permissible for you to do a group administration. These are self-administered instruments. However, if you wish and you have all the students, clients present at one time, you may go ahead and do a group administration where you read the questions to them and they, on their own, follow along and fill in the answers. And that's been pretty helpful for the youngest children and those who may have trouble reading the questions on their own. Step 6, review the instructions with the participants. Instructions are as follows. The following statements describe how children sometimes think, feel, or act. You read each item and then circle for the PFC. The response categories are yes, maybe, or no. For the PFSY, the response categories are strongly agree to strongly disagree. If you make a mistake, it instructs them to just go ahead and cross it out and then circle the new answer. Step 7, start the survey. And tell the children that they should turn to the second page of the survey. There's a cover sheet, they turn to the second page, they start. You'll notice the PFSC now is only 1 page long, which is really great because it's quite quick and simple for them to fill out. It's also quick and easy for you to make sure that they filled in all the questions. The PFSY is only 2 pages, so the same thing for that. It's been vastly simplified. When the surveys are returned, please check them to make sure that all the questions have been answered. The validity of the results of this instrument assume that the full number of items have been filled out. At a minimum, we're requesting that about 80% of the items be filled out. That would be 15 out of 18 on the PFSC and 20 out of 25 on the PFSY. What we've noticed most times in pilot testing is if a youth or child misses a question, it's not that they didn't want to answer it, they just simply skipped over it. Sometimes they follow the row across and answer two different questions in the same row. So if you would check for that, that would be great. Of course, we don't force them to answer a question if they don't want to, but it should merely point out if they haven't answered one that they might want to go ahead and complete it. Step 9, complete the for staff use only section of the survey. And on the next page here, we're going to show you what that looks like. Here's a version of the survey. You'll see that it looks very similar to the older PFS. This is the PFSC for children. And you'll see that there's boxes at the top, just like there always have been, where you mark pre-test or post-test. There's something new that we've put in there, we've been asked to put in there, and we want to direct your attention to that. It's on the second line. It asks if it is a post-test, has the child completed the program, yes or no? Please fill in that box, whether they've completed the post-test, whether they've completed the program by the time they take this post-test. You'll see then it asks for the provider, the client ID number if you have it at that time, and child's name, and so on and so forth. The instructions, which we've already gone over, are also listed there on the bottom. And on the actual survey, there's a circle around one of the answers, and then it shows the child had changed their mind, crossed out one of the answers, and then circled another answer. So it serves as an example right there, and you should direct their attention to that. Of course, if they have a pencil, they can erase. If they have a pen, don't worry about it. Just cross it out and circle the other correct answer. Some sample items for the PFSC. What we do have for you, these are fairly simple to understand. You can see that when you read it, most of the kids easily understood them. For instance, here's a sample from each one of the areas. I do a lot of things with my parents. That's one of the family questions, obviously. If you need to, or if they ask you, what does that mean? We have a paraphrasing guide in the back of the user manual. It may seem silly, but you should try and stick as closely as possible to the wording of the question when you paraphrase. And again, although you can do that on your own, there is some paraphrasing guidelines in the user manual. So for the first question, I do a lot of things with my parents. If they should ask, what does that mean? You might say, do you spend a lot of time with your family doing fun things? Another example, I know a lot in school. You might say, are you good at a lot of subjects like math, reading, writing, and or PE, and so on. Here's the front cover of the PFSY for 10 to 17-year-olds. You'll see that it looks identical, except the response categories to the questions here are strongly agree through strongly disagree. What we found is that nearly all the children ages 10 to 17 had taken a Likert scale test like this before, or Likert scale survey, and so that they understand what those things mean. If you need to explain that to them, you should say something to the effect, and it's written out in the user manual, that agree means that you usually agree with a statement. If you always agree with a statement, then you should put strongly disagree, or strongly agree, and vice versa. So you see the example there, I'm good at spelling. If they agree with that usually, they circle agree. If they always agree with that, then they put strongly agree. Some sample items for the PFSY. Here's the first one, is also a family question. You see my parents, listen to what I have to say, and right below that you see the paraphrased instruction that we would have in the user appendix. Do your parents take the time to listen to you when you have something to say? And you can see the remainder of the questions there. At this time, normally I would take questions, but since this is a taped show, I'll just say goodbye. Thank you very much. If you have any questions about the user manual or either one of the PFS surveys, please feel free to contact your coordinator or the folks at PEI. In particular, Pablo Bastida is in charge of this particular development. Thank you very much.